各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看我们 J 与 J 论坛，由我以及我们的好朋友、老朋友金诺威跟我们一起来讨论这个礼拜的时事。How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing fine, Jimmy. We're only 1 month into the year, but January feels like a full year. Feels like I've aged 1 year. In reality, it's only been 1 month.
Well, I don't even want to chance anymore because I think everyone can feel that. And I agree with you. I aged in a week, not just a month or a year. Just even the last week, I feel like I've aged. However, Jim, the one good thing I can tell you is that the focus on the headlines and the chatter and what is a talking point, what is affecting all of us right now is really the stock market, instead of finally, for once, from a change, instead of politics, which divides us. Now we can talk about stock market economy, which actually should unite us because we're all considered retail investors. None of us are the institution. Even though I work for an institution, I am not part of the whales. Right. So have you heard about what's going on with the short squeeze? I mean, what is your take on it? Could I ask you, what have you heard?
Well, what I understand to be going on, I'm not in the market every day like you are. I take a kind of a step back and watch from afar. But what I understand is that in the very recent past, many large institutions have been concerned that certain stocks, let's talk about GameStop as one example, but there are others, were rising too fast. The values were too high, and they were going to peak out and then fall. So many institutions went in and decided to short the stock. Okay? But what was happening is there was so much momentum. Reasons, I think, was very good. It shows that the individual investors, when they all get together, have incredible power. So they kept moving up, which harmed and significantly penalized the institution's short positions, and many institutions lost huge amounts of money very, very quickly. Having said all of that, two things. Number one, my first conclusion is I'm really glad to see that individual investors have this much power. Number two, I think the institutions, now everything in hindsight is 2020, but I think continuing to rise. They in effect acted too soon. But I think that anybody who is the individual investors that think the momentum is going to continue upward forever, if I were that individual investor, I would start thinking seriously about getting out of the stock and taking my profits, going home, putting my money in my pocket. Somebody once says, "How do you double your money?" Well, you fold it in half and put it in your pocket. So that's what they should be doing now. Now, what happens is it's inevitable that that stock will peak at some point, okay? But if I were the institution, I would let it peak, waffle at the top, and begin to come down. Then I would short it. Because once that happens, all of the individuals will lose heart, and they will start bailing out as well, and the short will work. In other words, the institutions just acted too fast. The other thing that will happen, Jimmy, is sooner or later, fundamentals of the stock and the performance of the underlying business will take over. The value of GameStop and whatever are outrunning its fundamentals. And I see you disagreeing with me.
Oh, yeah. You know, me and you, like I said, we're a different generation, but compared to the millennials, the people on Robinhood, on Reddit talking about this, there's still a generation after us. There are your kids and my kids' age. Your thought process was my thought process and my industry's thought process for this last week, for the last month, for the last year. But I'm shaking my head as me and you are the same, but it's no longer valid. The valuations, the paper, the profits, revenue, all out the window. I was telling you earlier before we taped, this will be a case study in business school for years to come. Netflix will make a documentary about it. It is literally unprecedented in our lifetime. Why is that? I agree with a lot of you, what you said. You can make it into the David versus Goliath story, where retail investors who get screwed over by institutions for generations finally has a say. Because institutions hedge, institutions use margin. And when the bet goes to south, there's government bailout. And usually retail investors are the ones left holding the bag. So what happened in the past few weeks? Jim, you know that I cannot talk about specific stocks as against my industry. No. But we're not. We're talking about generally the psychology. Psychology of people, and affects all of us. The fact they halted trading today, they halted trading on we call it the short squeeze stocks that are on the Wall Street Reddit, which has, I think, 2 million people in their Reddit thread. How this works was this, which what you said is very on point, but I want to give our audience a little bit of clarity. The short position has been put on for a long time by institutions because specifically of what you said. GameStop and AMC are companies that were not going to make it anymore because of the pandemic. The theaters, no one cares. They were failing. They were going to be liquidated or about to go to bankruptcy. So the short position.
I think there's a term for that, either ghost stock or zombie stock, or
that's right.
A stock or a company that cannot sustain itself.
That's right. So it does not. There is no rhyme or sense for this to go up for GameStop to go from $5 to $250 in a few months. There's no way to look at it as AMC's worth $250. So even at $10 is too much if you are talking about traditional valuation. So when you say, hey, it'll come back down it should never have went up there. Well, let's say when it hit 20, when it hit 50 or 100, people would have got out. Why did it keep going up? Because of technology and the influence of a million little, there's a joke, right? When you find Mike Tyson, if you find 100 little Mike Tysons, they're gonna take you down. When you have a lot of little, it's a separate accounts. So you keep pumping it up, and also, really, it is a way to punish the two major hedge funds that have major positions shorting GameStop. They've been engaged in a war of words for a long time. GameStop's been shorted for 2 years. Some of these threads has been talking about GameStop for 2 years. But what was the perfect storm was the fact that COVID happened. A lot of people are staying at home, working from home. Second, so they can't spend money. Second, because staying at home so they go online, and there's a lot of new trading platforms, such as Robinhood, where it offers you free trades, right? Free trades is very attractive. And then, of course, the stimulus money, the PPP money comes in. A lot of people just put their $1,200 or $600, whatever it is, and put it into the trading account. And that's up when there are a million people putting, $600 times a million. That could actually change the market. Before, there's no way because it's speculation. There's, in 2008, people were left holding the bag. Last March, there was people that lost their share. I agree with the way you invest. Investing is long-term. It's not a casino. It's not gambling. And sadly, that is what has happened. And so even though I could tell you, a lot of people, majority of people will say this is wrong to halt trading today on those specific positions. But I can also tell you from the other side that it could be a good way to protect some of the people that might be stuck in it because, they're down. It could go to zero. It could go from $250 to zero very quickly. Like I said, this is unprecedented. I have not seen anything like this. I do not chase this. Some of these have been on the radar. Some of them make sense. Because the short interest and the percentage of the float, these are public knowledge. You can tell which companies, all the companies. Okay, so obviously GameStop has the most short interest. So when you have when there's the most short interest, that means institutions are they're not holding the stock, right? They're shorting it. They want it to go down. Yeah, so when it goes up, they have to buy the shares back.
They're borrowing the stock in order.
That's right, they're borrowing. Yeah. When the price keeps going up, they have to buy the shares back to cover those. The short. So you can tell which companies have the highest short position, short interest, and highest flow. So the ones that have been going up, being pumped up, obviously does have that already, which is GameStop, AMC, Nokia, BlackBerry, Bed Bath & Beyond. I mean, there's 10, 15 companies. The attention of the horde, this hearsay, basically, this horde, they can only focus on a few of them, and they focus on it. Like today, everyone comes out. I mean, when the market is red, when the entire Dow Jones Industrial Index is down, and only these few stocks is up, there is something very, very odd with that. I mean, there's no research, no data that can back this up. But like I said, to me, this is a big deal, especially from an industry. For you, and even for someone that's not in the industry, they even are hearing about it. Does that make sense? So at this point, it can only go down. Jim,
it can only go down, and I would say that there are many historical parallels to this. In about the year 2000, maybe it was 1995. I don't remember forever or the exact date, but the Hunt family of Dallas tried to corner the market on silver. They bought up all the silver they possibly could, thinking that it was going to continue to rise. And while it was rising, other people thought, oh, I'm going to sell into it. And it went up and up and up until pretty soon it had nowhere else to go and it fell. And the Hunt family lost huge amounts of money. Another example back in the 2005 and 6 arena, where there were a lot of goofy mortgages, housing prices went up and up and up and up. And many people continued to borrow and borrow and borrow until guess what? Then the market cracked and everything came back down again. And a lot of people lost a tremendous amount of money. And just exactly what you said a few minutes ago then happened. The government came in to bail out the big institutions. Didn't bail out the little guy, the homeowner, but it bailed out the big institutions. And in the penny stock market, over a long period of time, there's been this whole concept of called pump and dump. Some people rush in and they pump up the value and everybody gets excited. Then the last one in gets killed. It's another version of a Ponzi scheme. And I just don't understand the motivation of many of these individuals that keep coming in and pumping it up. Sooner or later, they are the last one in line.
Jim, everything you said is what we've learned in graduate school, in finance, and we've seen it. All the cases you said has happened over and over again for decades, since the stock market has existed. But market manipulation is not limited to retail investors. Market manipulation is usually perpetrated by the institutions. Because, like you said, right, the bailout and retail investors are left holding the bag. How do I say this? The guys that's why I said it's different this time. Before, you would, institutions, how do I explain this in a way? Okay, for our viewers to know, institutions will manipulate a position. So even for this example, if you a lot of conspiracy theories, or if you believe in it, then there is some manipulation. There's no doubt. There has to be. There has always been. You can say that, hey, these guys in the chat, in the Reddit chat, is probably being paid by these companies that are about to fail. See, just give them 100,000 or $1 million and then let them talk it up. They have millions of followers. Just like in social media, you're an influencer. And then the stock price will go up, and paying them $1 million or 10 is worth it because, the stock, you're saving your company from being liquidated. And then you could split your shares. You could raise more funds. Your company goes from, it's $1 billion a day for you instead of, going bankrupt. You can say that. That probably does happen. But the fact is, institutions has used media information to manipulate the stock price since forever. If they want to go out and have negative reports, they want to go up, you'll talk about it. Institutions work with them to suppress prices before a merger or buyout. We know they'll suppress the stock price of a company to make sure the merger can go through. Or if they're about to oust a CEO or hire a new one. I'm in the market. There are so many things that I know that goes on, which is all part of, as a business person, Jim, part cost of doing business, right? That's part of the game. You have to play with the rules. Yeah. So what's happening now is, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. One is retail, because of technology, because of the aged youth, free trading, everything came together where they could actually have a say. But the other edge toward is that this horde that drives it up, and there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be hurt. That are going to be stuck in it. That we don't know. That we don't know who already took their money out. But like I said, this is on the minds of everyone, especially since we have a new administration. And Jim, by the way, like I said, no more politics. There's no if we're right. We just hope this country can unite and we can move on. And there's so many things that needs to be fixed. No matter who's in office, locally is more important. And the fact that you've always had so much experience. You've always had so much that we could all learn from. Mm-hmm. Instead of just disagreeing, we agree to disagree, but instead of just holding on to anything, we already know from the past shows, we've done probably 40 shows. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we haven't even scratched the surface of what you could offer. That your experience is unique. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about the market today, it's because it's
very timely, very timely. But one more thought on the market, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
I saw a television program yesterday, and one of the about the short squeeze, and one of the commentators said, "We're hearing calls for regulation, that the Biden administration should step in and regulate the behavior of markets." And the other guy said, "Well, I don't understand. Everything is being performed perfectly legally. Everyone knows exactly what they're doing. How are you going to regulate this? There's no law being broken. Everybody is behaving of their own free will. Why do you need regulation?" And the concept died right there, thankfully. But now go from there. I think another example. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I want to hear this.
Okay.
Example.
So what I was going to say is, I really, the main lesson out of the short squeeze is the power of the little guy. When many, 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 many little guys unite. And I think that is a lesson that we can take into many other areas of the economy, of politics, of social life, the power of working together on a united way. That's how armies win wars. That's how, et cetera, et cetera. And that brings up a topic that I wanted to speak with you about today that is also becoming pretty hot, especially in a place like Houston. And that is the demographics of Houston are changing. The demographics of Harris County and of all of Texas are changing. And I believe that Texas leads the United States in this demographic shift. Sitting here 20 or 30 years ago, the white population, people that look like me, dominated the demography and therefore dominated the politics. Probably 30 years ago in Houston or Harris County and Texas, probably the white population was approximately 60%. Earlier in this decade, it was about 45%. We anticipate with the new census coming out in 2020, it will be approximately 40%. So on a relative basis, the absolute numbers are still going up, but on a relative basis, the white population, the mainstream, has shrunk from 60 to 40% in the span of about 30 years. That trend will probably continue. So who are the people that have gained on a relative basis? It is the sum of three minority groups. Black population has increased a little bit. Asian population has increased a significant amount, but off of a relatively small base. On the absolute numbers are quite impressive, but the overwhelming majority of the change is in the Hispanic or Latino population. And they have gone from approximately 35 to over 45% just in one decade. And that momentum is likely to continue. So what does this mean? This means that voting patterns, social patterns, economic patterns, lifestyle changes are all changing very, very quickly. And back to what's really important across the United States is the changes that are occurring here are advanced announcement, advanced indication of what's going on elsewhere throughout the country. And you can see it happening. People who travel all around the United States, or for that matter around the world, are noticing all the same things as well. And our political system is just now beginning to feel the effects and is struggling to adapt. So I think that's very important, and that's a topic, Jimmy, that on future shows we need to delve into so that our listeners can truly understand what's going on, so that they too can decide how to participate in this for their own benefit, their individual benefit, and their collective united benefit. So I just wanted to introduce that concept to everyone at this early point.
Absolutely. We touched it, we scratched the surface before, but then we could delve into it because this is what's going to change our lives and our political system. What you mentioned about, we call it the white flight, right? Where does all the Caucasian Harris County residents go? Did they go to the suburbs? Did we move out to the country? I mean, move to Colorado. Where did everyone go? And an increase in population with Latino and Hispanic voters. But you know what is crazy, says Jim? We're both very well versed and very involved in local politics. I think I can't think of anybody else that knows about this more than the two of us. That is in the Mandarin Chinese media space. But I can tell you, the assumptions that neither party makes, or the images that we have, the preconceived notions of who will vote for who, has been completely shattered in this last election. We always talk about increasing voter turnout, especially for Asian Americans. I didn't know if you know that Asian Americans usually historically have low voter turnout.
No, that's true. And so do Hispanics.
Yes. Well, guess what? So everyone's trying to get them to turn out. Well, guess what? One party, Democrats, thought that, Asians will come out and vote for Democrats, right? Well, it doesn't work that way. Yes, there was a record turnout, higher than before, but the percentage that voted for Republicans, conservatives, was also higher. Does that make sense? For Latinos also. I don't know if we talked about it. Cuban Americans voted overwhelmingly for the GOP. Here in Texas, it was all gloom and doom. Well, GOP will not survive because the demographic change. I mean, you cannot win. There's just not enough votes because we assume that, Latinos and Hispanics will automatically vote Democrat. Well, that's not true. That has not happened. So what the GOP needs to do is, of course, to like you said, both parties need to recalibrate to try to appeal and win the votes, because no one party can appease everyone. So they really have to think about which you know what happened in Harris County. Mm-hmm. We've had some great conversations about the history of local politics, of how you could be in a seat for 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the blue wave comes, or before it was probably the red wave. Mm-hmm. I mean, 20 years ago, you cannot win a seat if you're not Republican, mm-hmm. right? In Harris mm-hmm. County, or to win judge, or to win county. But now it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. So the pendulum has to swing back, because it really has to be about policies and about, like you said, right, about what are you going to do for the people. And we need to discuss this with our viewers so they can understand how to, what you said very importantly, is how to participate and how to make a difference. Now, I want to touch a little bit about vaccinations, because this is really on everybody's mind all over the world. And for a lot of people that criticize the U.S., I mean, there's a lot of naysayers that, Jim, there's a lot of people, a lot of other countries are celebrating our demise, celebrating our failures, and rejoicing in what we haven't done well. But the fact is, we're one of the first countries that rolled out the vaccines, and that it will be available to everyone. Mm-hmm. Could you give us your thought on that, on how is it affecting us and how is it going to work?
Well, I think since the vaccine was, there's actually in the United States 2 vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, that were approved in mid to late December for formal approval. They were approved for formal vaccination and distribution throughout the country. Well, automatically they became popular throughout the world. And so those companies are selling their products throughout the world. In parts of Europe, particularly England, a third, called AstraZeneca, which is a different type of vaccine, as I understand it, but it is now circulating throughout Europe and maybe many other parts of the world. I don't know. There are also Chinese vaccinations and Russian vaccinations going out throughout the world. AstraZeneca has chosen so far not to participate in the United States, and Merck, another major pharmaceutical company, has just totally given up. So what has happened? The whole focus of the pandemic has shifted from all of the lockdowns and the preventions. In the public attention has shifted to, how do I get a vaccine? How do I get a vaccine? How do I get a vaccine? And there are really two legitimate, major problems that no one has figured out how to solve yet. Number one, how do you manufacture enough vaccine at a fastest pace in order to get it out across the country? We have 330 million people in the United States. And even with Mr. Biden's goal of 100 or a million a day, that is almost a year to get to everyone. Okay. Most people don't want to wait a year. And in the process, many people are trying to jump their position in line. I'll leave aside the ethics, et cetera, of that, only to say that the insufficient number or slow production, and in hindsight, it may be hugely fast, but it's slower than the demand. The other side of it is there's terribly unequal distribution mechanisms from state to state. Some states have distributed them quite equitably and quite quickly. Other states are stalled. So we're beginning to get some populist reaction and dissatisfaction. And I think it is going to be a very big challenge for governments at all levels, not just the Biden administration trying to come in and clean up a mess to make it happen better, but many governors are being criticized and many local officials are as well. They started distributing the vaccine through hospitals and major health facilities. They're now, in most cases, moving toward distributing it through drugstores and other mass locations. I am not in any way a health official. I don't know what the most effective distribution mechanism is. All I know is they're not getting it right to the degree that satisfies people. And there was a movie about 30 years ago where the lead character said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And we're getting to the point where it's very much like your short squeeze. The little guys are getting real unhappy with the big institutions. And so we'll see what happens. But I sure hope we can figure out a way to speed everything up, both the production and the delivery.
I'm taking my mother to get her vaccination today. She's been waiting for weeks, and it's a big sign of relief. But everything you said really it hits us emotionally. It hits on the heartstring. How do I say this? I don't know if the audience understands. Jim, me and you, we are considered, we've been here for a long time. Mm-hmm. We know a lot of people. Some people could say that we're one of the few people that have, how do I say this, that are one of the whales even. We have access to it. I know I do. Mm-hmm. We didn't get it. I don't feel, you were qualified for it already, but I'm saying we could. I know a lot of people that did skip the line. Does it make it right? To me and you is... we have a different kind of judge, right? Because of when our faith. But the fact is, we cannot. I cannot fathom this. I cannot do that. I cannot go there and skip the line because I know somebody and get it first, knowing that there are people that need it. And so, yes, you're right. This system's unfair. This country is in trouble if the rich and the connected, when it comes to life and death, those are the basic qualities of a society that is fair, right? A democracy, what we believe. If when it comes to life and death situations, that money and influence money and influence will always give you an advantage, and no matter what country you're in. I guess the social
and no matter what walk of life, you're always going to get the best food. You're going to get the best living conditions. You're going to get the best healthcare generally, etc. Money does permit advantage. There's no question about it.
No, there isn't. But you don't want to try to get you, Jim. Could you help me explain it to our audience? I cannot get it out there. Could you please help me?
Yeah, and actually there's a double whammy for the little guy. Number one, they're getting outraced to the top as the people with advantage jump ahead of them. Number two, many of the little people have more at risk physically because of lifestyle comorbidities, in some cases, racial situations or ethnic situations. People of
advantages.
And so they, ironically, need it more. And it seems to me, from a political standpoint, that the system should work very hard to protect the interest of those people who are the most vulnerable. And one of the concepts of democracy is the majority rules. But the primary responsibility of the majority is to protect the rights of the minority and not to roll over them. Especially in a situation like we are in the United States where things shift back and forth. But our country was founded on principles of equity, principles of fairness, principles of religion, all of those kinds of things. So I think our leadership has a special responsibility to take care of everyone, to publish things, to provide information, and then to live by their own rules and to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth all along. And that's a very difficult thing for our leadership to do.
Great point. I mean, our country was built on that for the past, hence the rise of our soft power. I mean, we used to live with that, everything you said. And now I think minority leads now. I think corporations have a more, the bottom line, stock prices matters more, and the elite. And, you know, the COVID this pandemic has showed whether it was vaccine, life and death choices, to the wealth gap, is exposed that and exaggerated that. And we need more leaders that could think about so-called the little people a lot more, because it used to be that. But local leaders does have a say. Vaccinations in different counties are rolled out differently. I know there's some certain parts where it is a lot more organized, and some that is not. But like you said, we're not experts in that in healthcare, so we don't know what is the best way. We just know that this way is not quite working well, and hope that it will get better. Have you made appointments to get vaccinated or? Yes,
last week my wife and I had very good fortune, and we were invited to get our first dose.
Congratulations!
So thank you. We'll get the second dose in about a week and a half.
Thank you. I'm happy for you. I'm very happy. I would love to end the show on this note. I hope you get vaccinated, your family does. Everyone that should get it, 65 and above, get it first. And slowly it'll come down to me, and I'll let you know when I get vaccinated. And we should also talk about the experience. You're one of the few people that have gotten. There's a lot of misinformation about the vaccine. I'm glad that you got it, because there's people that will not get it, that will say that, hey, this is... the government will plant a chip on you. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy out there. You believe in science, and that's great.
Yeah. I see no reason not to get it. So, anyway, Jimmy, I think we're out of time.
Yes, sir.
And let's continue on. You've got to spend a few minutes translating our segments and editing. And I thank you, and you and I will be in touch.
Thank you, Jim. Take care. See you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.